Starlight Stage is a new game by Japanime Games. This is a publisher, as you may know, that specializes in Japanese imports and games with a Japanese theme, even when not necessarily designed by Japanese designers. This game explores the idol phenomenon that I hear is big in Japan and about which I don't really know much. What I know is that in this game you are the manager of an idol agency. You start with a small group of cards representing young women that want to become popular in the showbiz, so you send them out to different types of events. They start acquiring some popularity, then you quote-unquote level them up, they become more famous versions of themselves, and you send these upgraded versions after cards that will give you more points at the end of the game. This is kind of like the general idea. Now, with Japanime games, I am always, or I'm sometimes conflicted. I never know what to expect from the point of view of the art, because some of their games have art that is simply too suggestive, too provocative from the sexual point of view for my taste. The anatomies are just too exaggerated. I just don't particularly appreciate that kind of art, which gets in the way of games that are sometimes otherwise very solid from the point of view of the design of the mechanics. If this is a concern of yours, then you don't have to worry too much about the Starlight Stage, because the women that are represented in this game are usually wearing clothes. Most of them are wearing clothes. I believe there are like 2 illustrations of women in a bikini. And also their anatomies, well, it looks like these women could actually stand. They're not so top heavy, most of them, that they would fall over if they try to stand, as you have in other games. So if that's a concern, the art is a concern for you. This is more, again, teenager manga art, and not particularly exaggerated, and not with a strong erotic element to it. In any case, let me show you how the game works. The game is played using 3 types of cards: fame cards, idol cards, and event cards. You shuffle each deck separately during setup, and then from each deck you draw a number of cards equal to the number of players, and you place those cards face up next to their deck. So this would be the setup for 3 players. Cards have a cost printed on the top left corner, indicating the number and type of icons that you need to provide to acquire the card. And then in the top right corner, they may have a number which represents the number of victory points that they are worth at the end of the game. Also, there might be an effect described here, not in this case. When you acquire the fashion leader, you will simply get 4 points at the end of the game. When you see text, it means that the card also does other stuff, a little more exciting. Now, speaking about the cost, there are 3 types of currencies that are diamonds, hearts, and music. So this would be, we have 1 music and 1 heart to acquire this card, 1 heart and 1 diamond, also here heart and diamond. However, these currencies exist in 2 versions. One is the regular version that is just a symbol on a dark background, and one is the achievement version, which is the same symbol within a medallion, within a circular yellow background. So, for example, if you acquire this card here, Campaign Girl, by using a regular heart and a regular diamond, you acquire this card, you place it in your personal play area, and that card will produce a heart achievement each turn. So actually you're buying these events to form a tableau in your play area. And so maybe after a while, my tableau that shouldn't be there will look like this, in which I have, let's move them here to the side, say this is my personal play area. I have 2 diamonds, I have 1 heart, and 3 music, again in the achievement version. That means that I almost have enough to acquire this card, which requires 3 music. I also need to find a way to produce those other 2, and we'll see how you do that. You start with the newcomer idols. They simply produce 1 unit of the regular version of each currency. So you start with a hand of 3 idols. And then, well, then you start playing. At the beginning of your turn, what you do is you may flip a card from one of the decks and add it to its own section. There is no maximum number of cards that can be available. And this actually is not a trivial decision, because maybe I really want an idol, or I want to improve my chances of getting the idol that I want, or I have a lot of ways of scoring points, but I don't like these, so I'm hoping to get more chances of getting a card that I may be interested. But as you make the decision, you also have to think that you're making cards available for other players. So there's an interesting element there. So at the beginning of your turn, you flip a card if you decide to do so. It's optional. Then you play 1 card, usually 1 card from your hand. Usually play 1 idol, and then you use the resources of the idol plus these tokens to acquire new cards. And these tokens simply, there will be game effects that will give you these tokens, and they are interchangeable exactly as the regular currencies from the card. This one is the same as this one. This one is the same as this one, and this one is the same as this one. They can be spent interchangeably. Usually you can only play 1 idol card to acquire a fame card or to acquire an idol card, but you can play more than 1 idol to acquire event cards. And say it's the beginning of the game, and I decide to play this card here that gives me this card here, that is the cost, and the effect is I get 2 diamond tokens, and then I discard the card. That's pretty simple. And then the next player maybe wants to draw a card from there, and the next player says, look at that, I want to spend music and a heart to acquire this card here, which then I place in my, remember, personal tableau that will produce those icons. So one of the things that you can do is simply to play a card to acquire another card. Again, for those cards you can play multiple ones. When you're acquiring an idol, not only do you play a card and possibly tokens and probably achievements, but also once you to acquire an idol, you need to discard the idol that you use and you get the new one. Basically, you're actually leveling her up. You're upgrading her. For example, suppose that I do have this idol here, and this is my tableau, and I want to upgrade her into her. So can I produce all the icons that I need? There are 3 achievements, so music in that with that background, which I have in my tableau. So that is done. Check those 3. This icon here is produced by this one. I don't know, lo and behold, I had this token which I spent, and now I can discard this card and take this one, which goes in my discard pile for now, but will be available later. As you can see now, she's much more powerful because now she produces all of these icons. And then later, I can in fact play her possibly with some other icons to acquire some of the fame cards, which will score me a lot of points. Say later, I play this card here together with a token, and I can now acquire this one here, which requires 4 regular music notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you kind of see the funny cycle that we have here. We start with regular symbols that we use to buy achievements, which is the currency that we use to upgrade our idols, that produce better versions of the regular currency that we need to buy fame cards. Kind of crazy, huh? But this is pretty much the idea. That is, you play an idol card and tokens either to acquire an event, or to upgrade the idol into a better idol, or to use a powerful idol and a lot of tokens to buy a fame card. Last thing that you can do during your turn, instead of one of those three things that I mentioned, you can simply discard an idol and take any one token from the supply. You're grinding idols to get your tokens, because maybe you're just one token short. So there was just that great fame card that you wanted, and and then you grind an idol, and that's time that you play. Maybe you're able to get the fame card that you want. So during your turn, you take one of those actions that they mentioned, play a card for one of those three functions, or discard it for a token. Next player goes, and one action like this until all players have run out of idol cards. That may not be during the same round, because players may use game effects to acquire more idols, so some players will be stuck with only 3 for the entire game. When all players have completed that, then the round is over, you start a new round, and you continue like this until the fame deck is depleted. So basically, after a while, you will have your hand of basic and improved cards. You will have your tableau that you have built, tableau resources, and hopefully you will have a stack of fame cards that you have acquired, and that will score you points at the end of the game. The points are indicated there in the top right corner, plus they may be modified also by game effects that may be described. They may be described at the bottom of the card, like in the case that you see here, for example, or here. Just some examples. Continue until the fame deck is exhausted, and at the point the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. This is a strong game, I think, from the point of view of the design. I personally enjoyed it. Again, I think it's a really, really strong game. And to me, it is a plus that the art is not an obstacle to me to enjoy the design. Being a fantasy fan, I think this mechanism would work very well with a fantasy theme, in which you have, instead of idols, young heroes that go out to kill some low-ranking enemies, the ever-present goblin, and then they level up, and then they go after bigger monsters and bigger treasure. But I digress. As for the game itself, it reminded me of Splendor in a sense, because also you're forming your own tableau, and then those resources can act as discounts as you buy new cards, also using other resources, tokens here. So there's this balance between transient resources and resources provided by your tableau. In fact, mechanically, this is basically a tableau building game. I also thought it was a deck building game at the beginning, but maybe it's a hand building game, or if it's a deck building game, well, you get your deck back every time. You don't manipulate your deck as much as you manipulate other type of resources, such as those tokens that you're constantly collecting, and again, your tableau, which is very important to achieve, to level up your idols before you collect fame. Because of this mechanism, the game definitely has an arc. It's not the same thing that you do throughout the entire game. It has a pretty clear logic, which actually is even described in the rules. It has a clear progression, as in fact, first you send your idols to perform events, level them up, and then you go after the bigger fame prizes. This has pluses and some minuses. I like the plus precisely that the game may start slow as people are building the little engine, and when the engine starts working, then it's exciting to get better idols, and then the last phase of the game is simply players gobbling up fame cards, grabbing right and left, becomes a race in fact to get those cards. And not just because of the big points, but also get specific cards and sometimes specific tokens to fulfill specific victory conditions. As you saw, some cards will give you more points if in fact you also fulfill some other conditions, which is good because this makes the last phase of the game, which is sort of like the harvest, more interesting because there's simply more things that you can go after. One thing, however, that, I don't know, it's a small minus, didn't really bother me all that much, but I thought I'd mention it. There are cases in the second phase of the game in which, well, you're committed because your upgraded idols took you a lot to build them, but they'll only be able to get certain things, because I don't think you'll have such a good hand of upgraded idols that will be able to get any fame card. So you still have some times where you have your great idols and you're finding yourself grinding them to get a simple measly token so that then you can use another idol to buy that card. It just feels like a waste, all of these great idols, quote unquote, in the fantasy version, these great heroes that you grind just for a small token. However, the good thing is that the game moves so fast. Okay, you have a hand of 3 cards, sometimes 4, maybe 5, but not past that, not likely. And you play, you get a card, or you play, you get a token. So the game moves fast enough that if in fact I am quote unquote virtually skipping a turn just to generate a token, chances are that in like 30-40 seconds gameplay is back to me, and then I'm using that token. So I see the results of what I did, and that mitigates that. But again, it just feels, I don't say strange, but anticlimactic that in the second phase of the game you will find yourself discarding these great characters for small rewards. Well, I'll say in the short term, but then you're getting those bigger cards, and that is great. But then, again, what mitigates that and makes the second or the last phase of the game interesting is precisely, as I said, those alternative or additional way of scoring, as in fact, well, I may be collecting tokens in order to win the game. And maybe because of some of those conditions, I'm okay grabbing a lot of low level cards just with 1 victory point, but again that fulfills some conditions that gives me extra victory points. So yes, you are committed to certain paths once you have your upgraded idols, because I think it's gonna be very hard, and I haven't seen it happen, that in the middle of the game then you go back and you develop a whole new upgraded idol to go after different sets. Also because there are cards there that no one is getting. By the time you completely repurpose one of your idols, chances are someone else has taken them simply by getting tokens. So you're not going to change your strategy entirely mid-game, but there are different ways in which you can implement it, again, trying to get different combinations of cards to score that keep that last phase of the game interesting. So it's a fun game. It's a fun game. It plays quickly. It's not necessarily short, but it moves so fast and constantly that although I was worried that it may drag a little because the deck of fame cards is pretty substantial, that wasn't the case, or at least it didn't feel that way. The game is not particularly short, it's not a filler whatsoever, but I was engaged all the time as I played it, and so it didn't feel long, although maybe it was longer than expected. Don't think of playing it as a filler, but taking into consideration the fact that maybe longer than expected, but chances are you're going to be entertained. Definitely I enjoy playing the game. I think this is a simple, solid game, simpler than the rules make it sound. There are parts in the rules that feel a little bit blurry, and I struggle with them a little more than I would have desired, but I think I got the game. If I made any major mistake in the explanation of the rules, well, I must have discovered a variant that works, at least for me and my group, because we enjoy playing the game. Starlight Stage. It's about idols. It's a splendor with the Japanese idols in a sense, but it's well done, it's well implemented, and it plays well, and definitely it is an enjoyable design.